Imagine just for a second that you are a genetically mutated super assassin.
Right.
You're bred from childhood to hunt these terrifying apex predators. You carry swords, you drink toxic elixirs, and you've survived a brutal culling process just to exist.
Just a completely harrowing baseline for a life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you're slowly realizing that the real threat to your world isn't, the dragon living in the remote mountain cave.
No, it's the shapeshifter living in the city, secretly manipulating the commodities market.
Yes. Or it's the local politicians using urban expansion to just wipe out ancient ecosystems. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a world where the so-called monsters are out-capitalizing humans.
Where the humans act like scavengers.
Right. And where the absolute most dangerous thing you can do isn't fighting a beast, it's trying to remain neutral.
It really is a complete inversion of everything we've come to expect from a fantasy setting, isn't it?
Oh, completely.
We aren't dealing with clear-cut morality or, noble quests. We are looking at a rapidly industrializing society. The old world of magic is colliding head-on with the brutal realities of, economics, prejudice, and basic survival.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking today for you, our listener. We're diving deep into the universe of Geralt of Rivia.
The mutant monster hunter himself.
The very same. He's navigating a landscape of diagnostic, muddy waters. But to be absolutely clear here, our mission today is not just a recounting of cool sword fights.
Though there are plenty of those.
There are. But we're really here to dissect the philosophical core of this world. We're going to explore the blurry lines separating monsters from humans, the ecological blowback of human expansion, and the psychological burden of emotional compartmentalization.
Not to mention the terrifying gravitational pull of destiny.
Oh, we are definitely getting into destiny. We have this fascinating stack of sources today. They cover encounters ranging from a philosophical debate over beer and marinated elvers to bizarre stock market manipulation.
A tragic romantic triangle, too.
Yeah. A diplomatic crisis in a forbidden forest, and finally a desperate massacre on a bridge made of bones. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because to understand any of it, we have to immediately discard the traditional knight in shining armor trope. From what I gather in these sources, witchers aren't noble knights. They seem more like biological exterminators. They get mutated as kids specifically to fight pests, right?
I mean, I see why you'd use the term exterminators, but I think that slightly flattens the reality of what they are. Let's refine that a bit.
Okay, fair enough.
A witcher isn't just a guy with a sword you call when you have rats in the basement. They are humans who have been taken as young children and subjected to a series of agonizing, often fatal mutations.
Right, toxic elixirs.
Exactly. The survival rate is horrific. The entire goal of this process is to strip away human physical frailties. They want to turn them into highly specialized killing machines.
So we're talking about enhanced senses, cat-like reflexes, that sort of thing.
Enhanced senses, reflexes, and an accelerated healing factor that completely defies normal biology.
But the cost of those upgrades is really what defines them socially, isn't it?
No, the cost is immense. Biologically, they are left entirely sterile. And socially, they are absolute outcasts.
Society basically reviles them.
Totally. They are viewed as unnatural aberrations. A lot of people see them as being just as monstrous as the creatures they're actually hired to kill.
Right. They're tolerated exclusively because they are useful.
Precisely. When Geralt steps into a village to handle a monster, he isn't bringing a moral compass. He is bringing a feast schedule.
He's remarkably upfront about it, too. He explicitly states that he doesn't kill for ideals. He kills for coin. Which brings us to this tavern called the Pensive Dragon. Geralt's having a meal with a very enigmatic man named Borch Three Jackdaws and Borch's two formidable Zaracanian warriors, Tea and Vea.
And the sensory details of this meal are just incredible in the text.
They really are. They are sitting in this room where the ceiling is blackened with soot. Spiders are literally dancing in the rafters, and they are devouring this massive feast.
It's so visceral.
They're eating Elver's young eels, marinated in olive oil, with garlic and green pepper pods. They have log driver soup packed with all these diverse mollusks.
Roast lamb with onions.
Yeah, and 3 crayfish drowning in dill.
Yep.
It is a chaotic, almost overwhelmingly alive description of consumption.
And that feast serves as the perfect backdrop for the philosophical framework Borch attempts to lay out for Geralt.
Right, he has this whole theory.
He does. Borch presents this idea of a strict, ideological palisade dividing the entire world.
Okay, break that down.
So on one side, you have the forces of order. That's the threatened, the innocent, the vulnerable civilization that requires protection.
And on the other side?
On the other side of the palisade, we have the forces of chaos, the aggressive menace, the wilderness, the monsters.
Right.
Borch makes the logical assumption that Geralt, as a professional monster hunter, stands firmly, unequivocally on the side of order.
But Geralt completely rejects that binary.
Yeah.
He dismisses it as, like, high-flown words.
He really hates being put in a box.
He refuses to let Borch draft him into this cosmic war between order and chaos. Geralt claims his motivations are purely practical, purely economic. If the creature is a threat and the price is right, he kills it.
Yeah, he compares his work to a farrier shoeing a horse.
Or a plumber fixing a pipe. It's just a trade. He's totally emotionally detached.
Well, he claims to be emotionally detached. What's fascinating here is how quickly Geralt's own strict mercenary logic falls apart under pressure.
Oh, totally. Borch essentially cross-examines him.
He does. He says, all right, if you are truly just an unbiased tool who kills anything for a fair price, then surely you've hunted dragons. They are the apex predators, right? The most cruel and fierce of all reptiles.
But Geralt immediately snaps back with a hard, non-negotiable rule. He never hunts true dragons.
Never.
He will take contracts on flying drakes, forktails, Draco lizards, the lesser species, but never a true green, red, or black dragon.
Right, so his entire I'm just a farrier shoeing a horse defense is a complete lie.
It's a total lie. He has this very rigid, highly personal moral code that he absolutely refuses to cross, even for money. And Borch, who seems to be actively testing Geralt's psychological boundaries here, pushes him even further.
He asks him about golden dragons.
Yes, and Geralt's reaction here is fascinating. He doesn't just say he won't hunt them. He dismisses them as a biological impossibility.
He argues that golden dragons are just a myth.
Right, and he says even if one was born as an accidental, unique mutation, it couldn't survive in the wild.
And pay attention to his reasoning there. He says nature has a limit. He states that mutants are sterile and therefore cannot survive long-term in nature.
Which is very telling.
He argues that only in fables do things without limits exist.
Here is where the psychology of this moment feels incredibly heavy to me. Think about it. Geralt is a sterile, mutated monster hunter.
Right.
He's a social outcast who believes he has absolutely no real place in the natural world. It seems to me like he's projecting his own existential dread directly onto the concept of the golden dragon.
Oh, that's a really interesting read.
He vehemently denies the possibility of a golden dragon existing because admitting that a unique, beautiful, powerful mutant could exist and thrive would directly challenge his own deeply internalized, bleak self-image.
I see what you mean.
If a majestic golden mutant can exist, then Geralt's entire narrative about himself as a doomed, unnatural freak starts to unravel.
I see why you'd lean into the psychological projection there, but let's look at the hard biology first.
Okay, lay it on me.
Geralt is a profound pragmatist. He views the world through a deeply scientific, empirical lens. He relies on biology, taxonomy, and observable facts to survive.
Sure, that keeps him alive.
Exactly. He is denying the golden dragon because admitting that magic can override biology invalidates his entire scientific worldview, not just his emotional state. If a golden dragon exists, the rules of biology are broken.
That makes sense.
But bridging back to your point, the physical reaction he has, the visible twitching of his jaw muscles while he talks about mutants being sterile, it reveals that the biology is deeply personal for him.
Exactly. He's using the laws of nature as a shield against hope. He tells Borch that only in fables survives what cannot survive in nature. He has meticulously categorized himself as a biological dead end.
He fully expects to die on the end of a monster's claws, leaving zero legacy.
Right, so he cannot allow the golden dragon to be real because it represents a mutant that transcends biological limitations. It represents a miracle. And Geralt, operating in his current state of emotional starvation, simply does not have the capacity to process miracles.
Which perfectly sets up the ideological collision that happens next, because the theoretical debate at the tavern abruptly ends, and we are thrust right into a tense, dusty standoff in a rocky gorge.
Oh, this scene is so good.
And sitting right there, perched on a hillock, actively demanding to be admired, is a living, breathing fable, a genuine golden dragon.
The description of the text is breathtaking. It's described as having feline grace, covered from its talons to the tip of its tail, in scales that shine with a glaring blaze of bright yellow gold.
And it doesn't just roar, it communicates telepathically.
Yes. It introduces itself as villain trait and mirth.
The sheer majesty and quiet confidence of Villentrate and Mirth serve to highlight the absolute baseness of the humans who have gathered in the gorge to hunt it.
They are acting like such scavengers.
They really are. When you look at the human factions present, this isn't a noble quest to slay a beast. It's a gold rush. It's a resource extraction operation.
Let's look at the players here.
Yeah.
You have King Niedemir, a young, ambitious politician who just wants to use the dragon's hoard to fund his regional conquests.
Then you have the Crinford Reavers.
Right, led by this crude, pragmatic thug named Boholt. They literally just want to butcher the dragon and chop it up for parts to sell on the open market.
Pure capitalism.
Exactly.
Yep.
Then you have Uck of Diness, a fanatical, highly exalted knight-errant who views the dragon exclusively through a lens of religious extremism.
He's terrifying in his own way.
And rounding out the group is the sorcerer Dorigere, who's actually there to protect the dragon, viewing it as an endangered species and a vital part of the ecological balance.
The human camp is just a microcosm of human dysfunction. They are bickering, threatening each other with weapons, spitting on each other's boots. They are paralyzed by greed and mutual distrust.
It's pathetic.
And one of the locals, a cobbler named Sheepbagger, actually suggests they bypass a fight entirely. He wants to take a dead sheep, stuff its carcass full of poison and rot, and leave it out for the dragon to eat.
Wait, so they're facing a legendary mythical beast, and their tactical approach is a poisoned garbage bag.
Basically, yes. The cowardice is staggering. It is the absolute antithesis of honor.
Unbelievable.
And right in the middle of this human and garbage fire, villain Creighton Mirth issues a telepathic challenge. The dragon forbids them from passing through his gorge, but offers a structured alternative.
A structured alternative?
Yeah, he proposes a formal, honorable, non-magical duel, conventional weapons only, no fire breathing on his part. A one-on-one fight to the utter capitulation of one side.
So the dragon is setting up Marquis of Queensberry rules. And who takes the bait? Ike of Dinessel, the religious fanatic. Ike goes off on this wild, unhinged rant, quoting a holy text about a foul dragon with 7 heads and a woman in purple sitting on its back.
He is totally disconnected from the reality in front of him.
He's projecting ancient religious texts onto this physical creature. And then, to formally accept the challenge, they send the dwarven herald, Yarpen Zigrin.
This part is hilarious.
Yarpen climbs up on a rock, looks at this majestic golden creature and yells, "Hey, you Fingit dragon!" It completely eviscerates any remaining illusion of high fantasy nobility.
The duel itself is a masterclass in subverting expectations. Ike charges forward on his warhorse, lowering his lance, fully expecting the dragon to act like a mindless brute, to rear up, roar, and take the hit.
Because that's what monsters do in stories.
Exactly. But villain Tritonmirth doesn't do that. The dragon flattens its body to the ground, moving with the fluid grace of a cat. It effortlessly dodges the tip of the lance, reaches a claw under the belly of the horse, and sweeps the knight from his saddle with a single, highly precise swipe. It completely neutralizes the human threat without resorting to a slaughter, and then telepathically, almost politely, asks, "Next, please."
So let's connect this back to Borch's palisade of order and chaos. Borch argued that humans stand on the side of order and monsters stand on the side of chaos.
Right.
But looking at the gorge, the humans are chaotic, treacherous, driven by base greed, and perfectly willing to use poison to assassinate their target. They are scavenging.
While the dragon is honorable.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the dragon, the supposed ultimate embodiment of chaotic menace, is the one initiating structure. It proposes a formalized duel, adheres strictly to the rules of engagement, and fights with disciplined, non-lethal grace.
It forces us to ask the uncomfortable question, what actually defines a monster? Is it scales and talons, or is it behavior?
Right.
The creature is acting with profound honor, while the humans are acting like opportunistic parasites. The narrative completely dismantles the presumption that human is synonymous with civilized, and monster is synonymous with savage.
And that dismantling leads us perfectly into the next major paradigm shift in these sources. Because if the majestic wilderness, the mountains, the deep forests, the gorges that's being violently claimed and destroyed by expanding human civilization, the creatures living there don't just politely vanish.
Evolution doesn't stop.
No, it doesn't. It gets dirty. The apex predators, like dragons, might hold their ground or retreat, but what happens to the lower-tier creatures? They adapt.
They absolutely do.
We pivot away from the sun-drenched mythical golden dragon and descend into the absolute lowest, filthiest gutters of human civilization. We are heading to a town midden heap, a garbage dump.
It is a phenomenal, jarring transition. We move from the height of myth down to the grotesque realities of urban waste. Gerald is hired by a corrupt local official, Mayor Herbalth, to kill a creature known as a Zoogle.
And the imagery here is intentionally revolting. Geralt is literally wading, sinking up to his thighs in stinking slime, rotten vegetables, and shattered pottery.
It's disgusting.
The Zoogle itself is described not as a proud beast, but as an enormous, bulbous mass. It's deformed, looking like a grotesque potato covered in tentacles, with a wide maw full of lumpish, irregular teeth.
It thrives entirely within the town's waste.
Geralt has to physically hack his way through a forest of tentacles while the creature vomits putrid slime all over him.
Oh.
And his compensation for this nightmare, a mere 100 marks.
Barely anything.
He aggressively negotiates it with a corrupt mayor who clearly cares nothing about the citizens the Zoogle has already eaten, only about balancing his budget.
The Zoogle is a brilliant representation of urban symbiosis. As humans clear-cut the old-growth forests and drain the swamps to build their cities, the ancient magic dies out. But biology always finds a workaround.
It adapts.
Right. These mutations adapt to the artificial environments created by human density. You see pseudo-rats taking over the sewer systems, ghouls migrating to city cemeteries to feed on concentrated human burials, and Zoogles living in the garbage dumps, literally feeding off the excess waste of civilization.
It's horrifying but logical.
Furthermore, the Zoogle is hermaphroditic. It reproduces entirely on its own within the filth. It is a monster entirely of humanity's own making. It is the direct biological byproduct of their rapid urbanization.
It really strips away any lingering romance about the Witcher profession. Geralt isn't slaying a dragon to save a princess. He's acting as a highly lethal, underpaid sanitation worker.
Exactly.
But as terrifying as the Zoogle is, it represents only the lowest, most baseline physical adaptation to city life. The sources then introduce us to the ultimate intellectual adaptation. We meet a halfling merchant named Dainty Biberfeld and a doppler named Teleco Lungervenk Latorte who goes by Dudu.
A doppler is a shapeshifter capable of perfectly mimicking the physical form, voice, and even the surface-level thoughts and mannerisms of any being it observes.
That's a powerful tool.
Dudu encounters Dainty Biberfeld on the road. But rather than killing the halfling and stealing his life permanently, which would be the standard monster protocol, Dudu simply ties Dainty up, leaves him in the bushes, takes his form, and walks into the massive economic hub of Novigrad.
And he doesn't go on a killing spree.
No, he starts playing the commodities market.
This is where the world building shifts from fantasy to complex economic theory. Dudu is basically running a high-frequency trading algorithm in a medieval market.
It's incredible.
Posing as Dainty, he goes to a powerful dwarven banker named Vime Vivaldi. He uses Dainty's existing line of credit to buy up massive quantities of seemingly terrible, useless goods.
Right. He buys rancid cod liver oil.
He buys cochineal, which is a red dye, and he buys a massive stockpile of imported mimosa bark. When the real Dainty finally escapes and tracks Dudu down, he is horrified. He thinks Dudu is intentionally bankrupting his business as an act of sabotage.
From Dainty's perspective, it looks like financial suicide. Why would anyone buy imported mimosa bark when the local oak bark, which is used for tanning leather, is incredibly cheap and abundant?
Right, it makes no sense.
But Dudu is operating with vastly superior market intelligence. He has his ear to the ground in a way the humans don't. He knows that the local druids and the dryads of the forest have just formed a coalition and enacted a total militant embargo on the oak forests.
Oh, wow.
They are trying to stop human deforestation, and they threaten to unleash plagues of hornets and giant rats on any logging camps.
So overnight, the local supply chain for oak bark completely dries up. The tanneries in Novigrad, which represent a massive sector of the economy, are desperate. They need bark to process leather.
And suddenly, Dudu is sitting on the only massive stockpile of tanning bark.
The mimosa bark. In the entire region, it's a classic short squeeze. The price skyrockets, and he sells it for an astronomical markup.
But the genius of his play is that he doesn't stop there. He understands institutional behavior.
Okay, tell me about the oil.
Right, so the city authorities of Novigrad are preparing for a massive religious festival. They are building altars for the eternal fire religion all over the city, and they have a massive procurement order for vigil lights. Dudu takes the seemingly worthless rancid cod liver oil, mixes it with the cochineal dye to turn it red, puts a wick in it, and sells it to the religious authorities as sacred, odorless, red-flamed vigil lights. He fulfills a massive government contract at a premium price.
That is brilliant. And the cherry on top. Because he sells the oil directly to the temple, he claims religious tax exemption on the transaction.
He's a financial savant.
In a matter of days, by manipulating supply chains, anticipating geopolitical embargoes, and exploiting religious fervor, Dudu generates a net profit of over 21,000 crowns.
Unbelievable.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Eventually, Geralt corners Dudu in a slaughterhouse tent, and the confrontation that follows is incredible. Dudu drops the disguise. He shifts rapidly through forms, becoming Geralt, then becoming the bard Dandelion.
And he delivers a deeply impassioned, brilliantly articulated argument for his own survival. He doesn't attack Geralt. He argues with him.
He essentially says, look at what you humans have done. You've destroyed the wilderness, you've cut down the forests, and when we try to live on the fringes, you exterminate us like rabid dogs.
He refuses to be a victim.
He says he refuses to live, freezing in the woods, starving, serving as target practice for human archers. He tells Geralt, Novigrad is a pack of wolves. I'll join that pack and survive. He wants to assimilate.
Dudu points out the glaring hypocrisy of human civilization. He notes that humans allow elves, dwarves, and halflings a marginal, albeit heavily prejudiced, possibility of assimilation within the city walls. They are allowed to participate in commerce.
Right.
Dudu asks why he is denied that same basic economic right. Is it simply because his natural unshifted form is visually horrifying to humans? He promises he has absolutely no intention of hurting anyone. He just wants to trade, maybe weave baskets, maybe find a wife. He wants to participate in capitalism.
It's a devastating critique of societal prejudice. Dudu isn't a monster. He's effectively a climate refugee. He is an immigrant seeking a better life in an urban center because his homeland has been eradicated by the very society that now rejects him. And Geralt, whose entire identity is rooted in being an outcast, listens.
He really hears him.
Dudu uses his telepathy to read Geralt's mind and realizes that Geralt is fundamentally morally disgusted by the idea of killing him in cold blood for the crime of trading goods. Geralt lets him go. He realizes the shapeshifter has a better moral compass than the merchants.
But the narrative provides an even sharper twist. Just as they resolve the situation, they are intercepted by the head of the city's secret police, a notoriously terrifying and ruthless man named Chappelle.
Oh.
Historically, Chappelle is feared for his brutality, but when he confronts Geralt and Dudu, he doesn't arrest the Doppler. Instead, he quietly instructs Dudu to shift back into the halfling form, and then the text reveals the underlying reality.
I love this part.
Chappelle is also a Doppler. The real human Chappelle died of a stroke 2 months prior, and this Doppler took his place to survive.
And Vivaldi the banker casually mentions that ever since the new Chappelle took over the secret police, he's been remarkably courteous, highly rational, and deeply honest.
It is the ultimate punchline to Borch's palisade of order and chaos. The monsters haven't just adapted to the city's underbelly like the Zeugl. They have quietly, efficiently assimilated into the highest echelons of power and the core of the economy.
Wild.
A shapeshifter is running the secret police and doing a far more humane, peaceful, and competent job than the human who previously held the post. Another shapeshifter just proved to be a more brilliant commodities trader than the established merchant class.
They are outperforming the humans at their own game.
The supposed monsters are demonstrably better at civilization than the civilized races. They have mastered the complex ecosystems of capitalism and bureaucracy simply as a mechanism for survival.
It completely flips the script. We see Geralt demonstrating an incredible capacity for empathy and intellectual flexibility here. He recognizes the fundamental right to exist in these outcast creatures.
He does.
But, and this is a massive pivot, when we move to the next section of our sources, we see a completely different side of him. While Geralt has infinite patience and empathy for a shapeshifter navigating a complex economy, when it comes to his own internal emotional life, he is deeply, profoundly stunted.
Oh, without a doubt.
We leave the bustling, chaotic streets of Novigrad and travel to a town called Aedginvale, and we dive straight into Geralt's volatile, agonizing romance with the sorceress Yennefer.
The environmental transition is striking. We move from the vibrant, filthy capitalism of Novigrad to the cold, sterile, almost oppressive environment of Aedginvale. And Yennefer herself is a character defined by intense contradictions.
How so?
The narrative constantly emphasizes her strict, uncompromising aesthetic. She dresses exclusively in black and white, black hair, black skirt, white blouse, and a velvet ribbon bearing an obsidian star. And her signature scent, a mixture of lilac and gooseberries, is omnipresent, almost suffocating in its intensity.
That was very dramatic.
She is a woman of immense magical power, demanding and authoritative, yet she harbors deep, hidden insecurities.
Their reunion in this town is electric, but it is deeply toxic. Geralt arrives at her room, smelling of the Zoogle he just killed in the Midden Heath. He's covered in sewage.
Not the most romantic entrance.
No. Instead of a warm greeting or even a practical conversation, Yennefer magically summons a bath of freezing seawater directly into the center of the room. It materializes as a green cloud that violently splashes down into a tub.
Wow.
It's a highly practical way to clean him, but the delivery is incredibly harsh and punitive. And the room's atmosphere is made even stranger by the presence of a magically crafted black kestrel that just sits there, silently watching them. The air is thick with unspoken resentment, yet there is this intense, desperate physical attraction between them.
During this tense reunion, Yennefer explains the history of the town. Agenvel is Elven for Shard of Ice. She recounts an ancient elven legend about a winter queen who rides through blinding snowstorms in a sleigh drawn by white horses.
Okay, a winter queen.
As she rides, she casts tiny, razor-sharp shards of ice into the wind. If a person is pierced in the eye or the heart by one of these shards, their fate is sealed. They are immediately filled with an internal, agonizing longing.
That's haunting.
Everything else in the world loses its color. Everything becomes ugly and gray. They abandon their lives, their families, everything, to blindly chase the Winter Queen, forever pursuing a cold, unattainable dream until they inevitably die of longing.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, think about the psychology of compartmentalization in high-stress professions in our world. Soldiers, surgeons, people who deal with trauma daily, they build walls to function.
Right.
Geralt has built an impenetrable fortress around his emotions, using the excuse of his Witcher mutations. But this legend of the Shard of Ice is the perfect, tragic metaphor for Geralt and Yennefer's dynamic. They have both been pierced by that shard.
They're doomed to chase each other.
They are hopelessly, magnetically drawn to each other, but they are entirely incapable of finding peace or stability together. Geralt complains throughout the sources that his Witcher elixirs are wrecking his physical stamina. But if you look at his lifestyle, his exhaustion clearly isn't just chemical, it's existential.
Absolutely. The constant violence, the societal rejection, the emotional whiplash of his relationship with Yennefer, it is eroding his psyche. He is terrified of his own emotions because his entire foundational identity is built on the myth that he has been stripped of them.
He clings to it.
He clings to the idea of Witcher sterility, not just biological sterility, but emotional sterility. If he is incapable of feeling, he cannot be hurt.
Yennefer sees right through it, though. She tells him directly, there is no romance in you. She views human existence as a dreary, wearisome, predictable rhythm, whereas she constantly yearns for the captivating, dramatic beauty found in elven legends.
They're so mismatched.
They're two deeply traumatized people who desperately want to love each other, but completely lack the emotional vocabulary to do it in a healthy way.
Which culminates in a truly absurd, tragic display of masculine pride. The conflict escalates when it is revealed that Yennefer is not exclusively seeing Geralt. She is also involved with a highly respected local sorcerer named Istrid.
A love triangle.
Geralt goes to confront Istrid at an archaeological dig site near the town walls. And instead of Geralt and Yennefer having a vulnerable conversation about what they both want, the two men sit down and discuss her as if she is a piece of disputed territory. Geralt openly admits they have been treating her like a rag ball, being bounced back and forth between them.
It is a profound failure of communication. You have two highly intelligent, immensely powerful men, and they are reduced to acting like foolish whipsters arguing over property.
It's embarrassing.
They both independently decide that Yennefer is too emotionally complex to make a clear choice between them, so they decide to remove her agency entirely. They arrange a duel to the death at a location called the Green Key Well.
They agree that the winner will claim Yennefer and the loser will die.
It perfectly illustrates their utter inability to compromise, to communicate, or to accept a situation they cannot violently control.
They would literally rather commit murder and face death than endure the discomfort of a vulnerable, honest conversation about their insecurities. And this absolute refusal to compromise, this stubborn, destructive clinging to one's own nature, regardless of the collateral damage, is immediately echoed in the next encounter detailed in our sources.
Oh, this next one is wild.
It serves as an almost comedic yet tragic mirror to Geralt and Yennefer's situation. Geralt is hired for a diplomatic translation job between a human aristocrat, Duke Aglovol, and a mermaid named Shinaz.
The tonal whiplash here is incredible. Gerald is sitting in a boat, awkwardly leaning over the side, trying to translate a shouting match between this haughty, overdressed human duke on the deck and a mermaid splashing around in the ocean waves.
It's such a funny image.
Aglovol insists he is madly in love with Shinaz and wants to marry her. But his condition for marriage is staggering in his arrogance. He absolutely refuses to live in the water. Instead, he has purchased a magical potion, and he demands that Shinaz drink it.
A potion that will cause her 3 days of agonizing physical pain.
Right. But it will magically shed her tail and give her human legs so she can live in his castle.
And Shinaz is completely rejecting the premise. Geralt is trying to faithfully translate Aglovol's flowery, romantic drivel, and Shinaz literally tells the Witcher to stop tiring himself out, because Aglovol always puts on a foolish expression when he talks about love.
She is not having it.
She delivers a deeply grounded, highly practical speech about the economics of sacrifice in a relationship. She points out that she is already making massive compromises for him. She hauls her body onto the sharp, dry rocks every single day just to see him, painfully scraping the scales off her bottom and fraying her delicate fins.
That sounds awful.
She argues that love requires mutual sacrifice, and she demands that Aglovol go to a local sea witch, undergo a spell, and have his legs transformed into a handsome fishtail so he can live in the ocean with her.
Wait, so the Duke's solution is to demand the mermaid undergo agonizing magical surgery to assimilate to his life? But he won't even consider asking a sea witch for a fishtail.
Not even for a second.
The arrogance here is staggering. He calls her insane and says she thinks I would have a fishy tail, not a chance. He cannot even fathom altering his own fundamental nature or enduring discomfort for her, yet he demands she physically mutilate herself to assimilate into his world.
Because neither party is willing to sacrifice their core biological nature legs versus tail, the romance hits an impenetrable wall. Shinaz finally realizes the futility of it. She tells Geralt to tell the Duke to dry up, and she swims away, cheerfully declaring she's going to go find a normal merman to spawn with.
Good for her.
The practical reality of their incompatibility overrides their romantic infatuation.
It's a hilarious scene, but it prompts this amazing reaction from Geralt's companion, the bard Dandelion, who is watching the entire debacle from the boat. Dandelion instantly recognizes the narrative potential, but he decides the truth is unusable.
The truth doesn't sell.
Exactly. He doesn't want to sing a song about a stubborn human duke and a highly practical mermaid who couldn't agree on a mortgage. Dandelion says he is going to write a tragic ballad where the mermaid trades her voice for legs, sacrifices her entire identity for the Duke, is brutally betrayed by him, and perishes from profound grief, dissolving into sea foam.
He is literally inventing the Little Mermaid fairy tale in real time.
Think about how we consume media today. We actively prefer tragic, romanticized lies over boring, practical truths. Dandelion is basically running a 13th century PR firm. He is spinning a narrative of absolute self-destruction because he knows it sells.
And Dandelion explicitly justifies this. He says ballads aren't written to be believed, they're written to move their audience. We, as a culture, crave the high drama of absolute fatal sacrifice because the reality that two people were simply too stubborn, too selfish, and too rigid to find a compromise is deeply unromantic and mundane.
And it perfectly reflects Geralt and Yennefer's dynamic. They are living inside a Dandelion ballad. They surround themselves with dramatic magical summons, obsidian stars, and duels to the death, precisely because they refuse to do the boring, deeply uncomfortable, mundane work of emotional compromise.
It's much easier to just be dramatic.
But Gerald's stubborn refusal to compromise doesn't stop at his romantic life. It extends to his fundamental cosmological belief system. He aggressively, repeatedly denies the concept of destiny. He believes he is a free agent. But as the narrative moves into the final 2 sections, it becomes terrifyingly clear that destiny is not a subscription you can just cancel.
This brings us into the darkest, most oppressive environment in the sources, Geralt's journey into Brooklyn, the ancient forbidden forest of the dryads.
Set the scene for us.
The atmosphere here is suffocating. Brooklyn is not a peaceful, serene nature reserve. It is an active, highly lethal, centuries-old war zone. The dryads do not negotiate with trespassers. They operate a brutal insurgency.
That's terrifying.
They leave human corpses as markers, with warning arrows fletched with yellow pheasant feathers shot precisely through their eyes. Geralt is permitted entry only because he is known to them, and he is guided through this deadly, booby-trapped maze by a dryad named Brain.
And Brain's presence highlights the terrifying reality of this war. She is clearly a human girl who was kidnapped at a young age, brainwashed, and entirely assimilated into dryad culture. She has lost her original human name, her memories of her family, and her human identity.
It's tragic.
While traveling through this incredibly hostile terrain, Geralt and Bran hear screams. Geralt rushes forward and saves a lost little girl from a massive, terrifying creature called a Ugern. The description is pure horror. A 12-foot-long centipede-like monster with yellow-hooked limbs, flat-armored segments, and venom-dripping pincers. Geralt barely manages to hack it to pieces against a tree trunk.
And the girl he saves from the centipede, it is Princess Ciri of Cintra.
Ciri.
She is 10 years old, covered in forest dirt, constantly sniffing because she has caught a cold, and completely out of her depth. She has fled into the deadly forest to escape an arranged political marriage to a prince named Kistrin, whom she describes as fat and stupid.
Despite being terrified and snot-nosed, she maintains this fierce, haughty royal pride. She adamantly claims she isn't just material to be traded away in a treaty by adults.
Ciri's presence in the heart of Brokilon is a massive geopolitical crisis waiting to happen. Geralt and Brain escort her deep into the forest to a place called Duin Canal, where the massive trees are magically shaped into living, multi-level houses.
And who do they meet there?
Here, they meet Ithne, the ancient, silver-haired ruler of the Dryads. Ithne is a deeply radicalized leader. She has been fighting a losing war against human encroachment for centuries. A local human ruler, King Venslov, has offered her a formal peace treaty, but the terms require her to concede the outer edges of the forest to human loggers.
And I'm guessing she says no.
Ithne absolutely refuses. She views any territorial concession, no matter how small, as a surrender of Brokilon's fundamental soul.
And because the Dryads are slowly losing the war of attrition against human breeding rates, their numbers are dwindling. Ithne has resorted to deeply morally compromising tactics to sustain her forces. She is systematically kidnapping human girls, like Brain, erasing their memories, and forcing them to become Dryad warriors.
This raises an important question, though. Geralt, despite his usual neutrality, directly challenges her on this practice. He points out the profound cruelty of her strategy.
He does.
He argues that she is sacrificing the memory and humanity of innocent children to fight a war she inevitably cannot win. Human expansion is an unstoppable economic and biological force. He asks her, essentially, if her actions are truly cultural preservation, or if they have just become the blind, mechanical perpetuation of hatred.
Ithne's response is chilling in its long-term perspective. She argues that Brokilon only endures because she fights back violently. She dismisses human kings and their treaties entirely. She knows that human empires are fleeting. They rise, they build cities, they fall, and they turn into white skeletons buried in marble tombs. Meanwhile, the ancient oaks of Brokilon remain.
She operates on a geological timescale.
She does. But she decides to prove a deeply personal point to Geralt regarding the concept of destiny. She prepares to administer the water of Brokilon to Ciri.
The water of Brokilon is a highly toxic, powerful, mutagenic, and hallucinogenic liquid. When a human drinks it, it completely erases their human memories, their attachments, their past, and permanently binds their psyche to the forest, effectively transforming them into a dryad. It is a tool of total assimilation.
Geralt is absolutely desperate to stop this from happening, because Geralt knows exactly who Ciri is. Years ago, in a moment of hubris, Geralt saved the life of Ciri's father. When offered a reward, Geralt invoked a terrifying societal tradition known as the Law of Surprise.
Let's unpack the mechanics of the Law of Surprise, because it's not just a quaint fairy tale trope. In a world utterly dominated by chaotic monsters, unpredictable magic, and sudden death, humans have institutionalized chaos into a binding legal contract.
It's the ultimate futures market.
Exactly, where the underlying asset is destiny itself. You ask for that which you already have but do not know, or the first thing that comes to greet you upon your return. It is a profound surrender of agency to the universe.
And in Geralt's case, the unseen asset turned out to be Ciri. She was the child born while her father was away. She's legally, magically, and cosmically his destiny. She's referred to as the child of the elder blood.
But Geralt has spent his entire adult life running away from this destiny.
He has explicitly refused to claim her. He is terrified of the responsibility. He truly believes that as a mutant, an outcast, a sterile killer, he can offer a child nothing but pain, violence, and isolation. But in Brokilon, Ithne forces the issue. She hands the goblet to Ciri and makes her choose.
Ciri drinks the water of Brokilon, and the result is stunning. Nothing happens.
Nothing.
Nothing. She does not lose her memory. Her eyes do not glaze over. She is completely immune to the mutagenic effects of the water. The implication is profound. Her destiny is so incredibly strong, so inextricably cosmically linked to Geralt, that not even the ancient, concentrated magic of Brokilon can alter it.
Wow.
She looks directly at Eithne, clear-eyed, and says she chooses to follow her destiny with the Witcher. It is a massive rebuke to Eithne's power.
But Geralt still refuses to accept it. Arrogant and absolutely desperate to prove to Eithne that destiny is a myth, Geralt takes the goblet and drinks the water of Brokilon himself. He assumes his Witcher mutations will neutralize the toxins.
First mistake.
Huge. The water hits his system like a sledgehammer. He doesn't lose his memory. Instead, his psyche is cracked open, and he is plunged into deeply profound, terrifying hallucinations. He sees visions of a past May Day Eve festival, Bellatine. He sees Yennefer's tearful face, and she tells him, too little. Something more is needed. He hears his own voice constantly denying destiny, and then the vision shifts to a terrifying image of Ciri's grandmother, the warrior Queen Calanthe. She is bloody, dying in shattered armor.
The vision of Queen Calanthe delivers the ultimate psychological blow. She warns Geralt that his stubborn, cowardly refusal to accept his destiny doesn't magically keep him safe. It only ensures that the inevitable death and destruction that pursues him will catch up with the vulnerable people around him instead.
It's devastating.
By trying to remain neutral, by desperately clinging to his supposed emotional sterility, he is abandoning the people who are tied to him. Calanthe's ghost tells him that because death cannot seem to catch the Witcher, it settles for the people he loves. It is the horrific consequence of his inaction.
The water of Brokilon forces Geralt to stare directly into the absolute void at the center of his philosophy. You would think this is the moment of revelation. You'd think he wakes up, embraces Ciri, and accepts his role.
But he doesn't.
But he doesn't. He wakes up from the hallucination, he escorts Ciri safely out of the borders of Brokilon, and then he leaves her. He hands her over to a detachment of guards to be returned to her grandmother in Sintra. He still stubbornly, tragically believes that by dodging his destiny, by severing the tie, he is keeping her isolated from his dark, violent world. He runs away again.
Which brings us to the climax of this deep dive, the final, brutal section of our sources. Geralt has run from his emotional connection to Yennefer, he has run from his responsibility to Ciri, and he has run from the cosmological pull of his destiny.
But destiny, as Eithne warned him, is a sword with two blades. You can run, but it will hunt you down. The narrative drops us onto a rotting, moss-covered timber bridge spanning a deep, dark ravine. And the bottom of this ravine is completely filled with a massive accumulation of human skulls, ribs, and shin bones.
It is a literal bridge of bones. A merchant named Jurga is trapped there. His heavy cartwheel has broken through the rotted timbers of the bridge, trapping his wagon. His hired servants have fled in absolute terror. The sun is rapidly setting, and Jurga knows that whatever slaughtered all those people in the ravine below is going to come out the moment it gets dark.
And then Geralt shows up.
Geralt arrives on his horse. He assesses the situation, tells Jurga to hide under the cart, and steps out onto the center of the wooden bridge entirely alone. And as the darkness falls, the host of monsters emerges.
The visual description of these creatures is pure nightmare fuel. They are small, incredibly gaunt, skeletal figures, standing less than 4 feet tall. They move with a jerky, unnatural heron-like gait. They have flat reptilian foreheads, glowing yellow eyes, and wide, frog-like maws packed with needle-sharp fangs. And they swarm up from the ravine onto the bridge in unimaginable, overwhelming numbers.
The battle that ensues is not a graceful, honorable, formalized duel like the encounter with the Golden Dragon. It is a desperate, chaotic, seething massacre. Geralt is whirling in the center of the bridge, his silver sword flashing, hacking off claws and toad-like muzzles. He is operating at the absolute peak of his mutated abilities, but there are simply too many of them.
They just swarm over him.
They swarm over him like army ants. They latch onto his legs, dragging him down by sheer weight of numbers. In a final, desperate, sacrificial move, Geralt throws himself over the edge of the bridge, taking the entire writhing mass of monsters down into the dark ravine with him.
He successfully saves the merchant Jurga, but the physical cost is absolute. Geralt manages to drag himself back up onto the timber bridge, but he is terribly, fatally wounded. The text notes that he's bleeding black, shining blood.
This isn't just blood loss. This is a sign of the severe systemic toxicity of his Witcher elixirs, mixing with massive physical trauma. His body is shutting down. He collapses onto the planks of the bridge, staring directly into the face of his own inevitable death.
And it's here, in his dying delirium, bleeding out black blood on a rotting bridge over a mass grave, that Geralt finally, utterly stops running. Uriga, the merchant, emerges from under the cart. He is terrified, but overwhelmingly grateful. He begs to know how he can possibly repay the Witcher for saving his life. He offers Geralt gold, goods, anything he owns.
And Geralt, the man who has spent his entire existence rejecting fate, rejecting the possibility of the Golden Dragon, rejecting Yennefer's love, rejecting Ciri's protection, finally submits. He refuses the gold. He demands the legendary Witcher's fee.
So what does this all mean?
He invokes the law of surprise. He tells Uriga with his dying breath, "You will give me whatever you come across at home on your return, but did not expect." It is the exact same vow, the exact same legal and cosmic mechanism that tied him to Ciri years ago.
We have to ask, why do this now? Why, when he is literally bleeding to death and cannot possibly collect a reward, does he invoke a contract based on future destiny?
Because it represents total surrender. Geralt is finally throwing himself entirely, without reservation, into the hands of fate. He has reached the end of his philosophy. He has finally realized the absolute terrifying truth of his existence. He cannot survive in a vacuum.
It's all connected.
His enforced isolation, his desperate clinging to emotional sterility, his rejection of the interconnectedness of the world, it has all led him precisely to this moment, dying alone in the dark on a bridge of bones. By invoking the law of surprise with his dying breath, he is desperately reaching out for a connection to the future. He must embrace the destiny he has been running from because he finally understands that the alternative is just the void.
It's an incredibly powerful thematic conclusion to everything we've unpacked today. To recap the massive philosophical ground we've covered in these sources, we started with the practical mercenary morals of a mutant debating the existence of a dragon over a plate of eels.
We saw the raw, brilliant, capitalistic survival instinct of a shapeshifter manipulating commodities markets in a city built on the ruins of nature.
We watched doomed, stubborn lovers absolutely refuse to compromise, whether it was a sorceress and a witcher trapped by their own pride, or an arrogant duke and a practical mermaid arguing over the biological cost of assimilation.
And we witnessed the militant, tragic isolationism of the dryads fighting a brutal, slow-motion war against time itself.
And running through all of these disparate encounters is a central, unavoidable thread of adaptation and inevitability. The sources we explored today aren't just fantasy stories about a guy with a sword killing beasts. They are complex narratives about a rapidly changing ecosystem.
The old world of ancient magic, of honorable golden dragons and pristine, untouchable forests is dying. The beings caught in this massive socio-political transition must adapt, like Dudu the Doppler successfully assimilating into the Novigrad economy, or they will perish, like the isolated, radicalized dryads of Brokilon.
Geralt tried with everything he had to be the exception to the rule. He tried to remain completely neutral. He tried to exist purely as a tool, emotionally sterile, unbound by politics, untouched by love, and immune to fate. He tried to dodge his destiny at every single turn.
Which leaves us with a final, vital reflection on the nature of destiny as it is presented in this universe. Is destiny a magical, preordained force assigned by the cosmos, or is it simply the inevitable, inescapable consequence of the choices we stubbornly refuse to make? Geralt ran from his emotional and moral responsibilities for decades, and it was the very act of running away that ensured destiny finally caught him right at the edge of the abyss, bleeding out on a bridge of bones.
It brings us right back to where we started. When you step out of the clean, binary world of order versus chaos and into the murky, complex waters of existence, you can't just remain an observer forever. Eventually, the swamp pulls you in. You have to make a choice, or the choice will be made for you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the narratives you encounter. Keep looking for the monsters in the boardrooms as well as the forests, and we will see you next time.